morning, noon, afternoon, evening, and night to all. Welcome back to ATSCast. This is your neighborhood dude Jude, your host, and with me, as usual, is the rest of the ATS heartbeat. Okay, wait, heartbeat, kind of like half heartbeat. But yes, anyways, what's up?
Yes, half a heartbeat. Yes. Hello everyone, I'll be back at it again. You already know. Uh, for those who don't, I'm in Toronto, 23 now. Wow, I'm older. Um, University student, unfortunately, or more fortunate, I guess. And yeah, I'm just chilling. Amir.
What's going on, people? I'm here, and just like Abid, I'm also a university student from Malaysia by way of Seattle, Washington, and let's get right into it.
Since they all said that they're a university student, I'm also a university student, just in case the podcast listeners don't know. I've been like, this is your host, but your host is still a teenager. Anyway, before we start, belated happy birthday to Abid. Because
Oh,
I
thank you.
mentioned that
Yes.
mentioned that in his
Thank
brief,
you. Thank you.
plus 1 year. But this week, we'll be doing something similar to last week, not in terms of topic, but in terms of the choice of topic, because we've selected a topic that was also uh, suggested by one of our listeners, and it's a very striking topic because the fact that we're university students means we study this climate change. It's always apparent, regardless of what field you're in. It's bound to come up in conversation, whether it be formal, informal, or in an academic setting. But it's an interesting topic if we don't talk about the general, like the monotonic stuff about climate change, like, oh, is climate change real? That's a really common question that people get, and although we have an answer, people don't seem to understand why that's true. This is yeah. So with that, initial thoughts on climate change, guys. What do you envision first thing you hear about climate change? Is it always negative?
Uh, I can go first. Climate change is actually, I mean, it very much exists. I think the easiest example was from like what 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, with the Texas
Huh.
snowstorm or whatever.
Oh yeah,
That's pretty much evidence that it is a very real thing, and I think a lot of people take it for granted that climate change isn't gonna affect us or whatever. I am sometimes one of those people. I will say, you don't really realize how much it's affecting the world and you even at an individual level. There are a lot of negative connotations to it, as in not climate change. I mean, obviously, climate change itself isn't a good thing, but just perceptions overall, rather, of what climate change is. People think it's some bullshit conspiracy or whatever, even though there's clear scientific evidence against it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really interesting. Amir?
definitely fascinating, huh? Yeah, I think it's healthy to have these arguments, whether people are pro or against climate change or global warming. But the most striking thing is like you can't say outright that it doesn't exist. uh, it just doesn't bring any positives to the argument at all. It just shows that you're just a denier. Uh, when Abid brought along the winter storm that happened in Texas, I think that the power grid operators in Texas was like overcharging the state for about $16 billion during that storm during that period. So it just adds up to like another connotation of what climate change is bringing negative light to everyone's eyes as well. Like if it's not environmentally destructive, it's economically devastative as well.
Let's highlight Texas for a bit because of the
Fuck
recent
yeah,
circumstances there.
Texas. Let's go.
Because, dude, I
Post
mean,
Malone.
I've listened and watched and read a lot of stuff about it because California is right here. The fact that Texas is the only state to not be as part of the national grid. So, like, the West Coast has their national grid, the East Coast has their national grid, and all the middle states like join whichever grid is closest. Texas is literally the only state that's like, hey, I want to create my own grid.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because and you want to know the reason why? It's because they want to escape the strict regulations that the other national grids have.
True.
And you see, that's where the point comes. Like, I don't think you can't blame the storm, because people who are supposed to be prepared for it are, well, not preparing for it in this case, right?
Yeah.
Which brings us to that point, right? Like, if we do accept, and we should all accept, that climate change is real, even though a lot of politicians deny it, but say that everyone in the world does accept it, like, what's the best path forward? Do we mitigate climate change? Do we force everyone to change their habits? Because as we've seen, like, even if everyone believes in climate change, there are certain habits that can't be broken, right? Like, plastic straws in Philippines took forever to get rid of, dude. Like, that's just one component of, like, the plastic pollution that contributes to this, entire effect. So what do you guys think? Mitigation, adaptation? Well, what's the way forward?
I think it's just a combination of all of that. Like by starting these conversations when everyone is like very infused about it, I feel like the path forward gets so much easier because it's much more clearer and like more engagement can be made to find solutions to these problems like plastic pollution, even light pollution sometimes, and sound pollution in the cities where it's like growing in its destruction. Um, when we talk about how people when people get more knowledgeable about these type of topics, I feel as though there's more there's more people from different backgrounds that have their say in it because not everyone has like the similar way of life as as another person. So I feel as though it just adds to the conversation really that really helps like towards being more adaptive and finding a middle ground per se if like there's still a lingering amount of people that actually still don't believe that may be
That's
the
true.
case.
Like, finding a middle ground means accepting that they have some facts, right? Like, which clearly isn't
Yeah.
right. But yeah, that's all fair and good. Abe?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's dude, it's really interesting because what just hit me as you said, should we force it onto people? I'm like, if we don't act out of our free will right now, eventually we're getting to a point where yes, you have to start forcing it down people's throats, right? Like, since I feel like we were kids, like global warming and climate change, we've been hearing about it, and like everyone's like, oh, it's real, it's there, this, but no one cares. And I feel like obviously there has been significant changes over the years, but at the same time, like, has there really, has there really been that much of a change? Yes, you have all these countries investing and doing their best or whatever, doing quote unquote their best, but but still, same problems lie and the same preachings are being heard that I heard when I was freaking 80 years old. So, I mean, what I hope for is what Amir was like saying. We talk about it more, create the discussions everywhere, and try to get people educated and try to understand the whole notion and topic itself and what we have to be doing if we care to live on this planet. But I feel like in the near future, if we don't try to adapt it out of free will, not only the government, I feel like there just has to be like enforcement taking place around certain things. It's like, oh, you meet a certain water quota and then your water gets cut off or whatever. Obviously, I hope that doesn't happen. But with each passing day, it seems more and more like we're gonna hit a dystopian future where it's very everything's futuristic. But hey, man, it's like after using like let's say like a 30, 50, 60 gallons of water or whatever, it's like, oh, you're cut off for the day, buddy. It's like, well, there goes my water, boy.
Well, that's already happening in Malaysia, so
kid.
Hey man, that's for
Yeah.
different reasons that we know.
The water shortages in Malaysia back in January. I think they were 3 consecutive days. I think that's
I think
striking as it is.
months, my friend.
But yeah, with regards to that, I think we, as in the generation who's grown up in the early 2010s, late 2010s, we're the first generation to be fully immersed in climate change as a fact, because everyone before that was informed of climate change when they're already, growing up, right? So it's a new concept for them. It's a new shift in ideology. Whereas for us, um, especially if we're gone to school and we've been forced to, forced to learn, not forced per se, but like shown that climate change is such a mitigating issue that we need to talk about it and we need to be serious about it. And that's where the actions lie within ourselves in a sense, right? Because once the past generation, and sad truth is that a lot of the deniers are the past generation. Because of that fact, uh, we have the responsibility, right? And that leads to the question: when you conserve the environment, it doesn't necessarily reap the benefits for us, but it reaps the benefits for future generations. What do you guys think of this system? Because it's more of like we're sacrificing a bit of our I can't find the right word, our life in a sense, right? Like our freedom. There you go. We're sacrificing a bit of our freedoms for the betterment of the world, for our future. And I don't think a lot of people accept that argument personally. Sad truth.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I guess I get. See, there's a part of me that very much aligns with, yeah, do it for the future. But at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, nah, fuck them kids. I gotta live my life, But,
Yeah.
which is often how the generations before us see it, right? Like, in a way, I've heard it from multiple people. It's like, yeah, y'all do whatever. I'm gonna enjoy myself before I leave.
Right.
But I mean, dude, everyone has to start seeing it that way. I guess it's although it is tough, it is hard not to be selfish as being a human. um, Taking that selfless path, we have to think about it in a very macro sense. Hey, this planet, we're not even just killing ourselves, our population. We're literally killing a planet with other living beings, and just what I mean, like the entire environment is gonna be fucked. It's just gonna be a desolate planet at one point. It's gonna be like one of those movies that you see growing up of a desolate moon or whatever, and it's like there's no life forms or anything. There's a part of me that wants to go. Yeah, I mean that's pretty dark, but there's a part of me that wants to go. Oh, Mass Effect that bitch, and put on a suit and start
At least
war.
we're going to Mars.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Elon Musk and everything, but it's sad that the trajectory is that way, rather than actually getting better. But I mean, hey man, if it's to keep the generations alive, I wanna have Abid Hyder Junior still live on or whatever. If it gets there, hey man. But I mean, like, what I mean is like the future generations for sure. Whatever is to come, like whoever is to come. I mean, I want them to get the best life they can while living my best life. And if I'm it's at the expense of some of my stuff, I know in the future they're gonna have to do the same, and it is just a generational thing. Every generation comes with a cost. Sure, we can say previous generations didn't have as big of a cost, but hey, man, the plague and everything, Then again, we're in a pandemic, so tough.
What struck me is that Abid assumed that like 3-4 of his future generations is gonna be called Abid too. So that's a pretty enlightening.
Nah. I mean, I don't expect them to be called out, but I mean, like, that's just.
I got you.
It's
I
the
got
phrasing.
you.
It's just
means.
if they are, holy shit, y'all well.
Hey man, the concept of Abid Hayar the Third just intrigues me even more to like just
Yeah,
self-sustain.
I can't imagine going to Abid's
Dude.
future house, for example, like say Abid, and then like 3 faces turn
Bro,
at me. I'm like, damn, dude, that's
that dude's
crazy.
gonna be Henry VIII. Create his own branch
Wait,
of
yeah, we're
something.
talking about the 6 wives yet, huh? Anyway. I felt like I cut off Amir. Amir, please.
Yeah, you. Oh, I feel like our generation has been tasked with like this impossible feat and or this impossible dream to like set back all our dreams and some part of our future to sustain like the future itself. Um, like, and the trade-off is that we have the internet, technology is increasing, but you know, global warming, how the Earth is like deteriorating in its stead. We're the ones tasked with having these conversations more and more because what like the past like the previous generation can't be trusted because what Jeep said, they were just infused in it when they're like really in the later years of their lives, while like the generation after us, I don't really precisely trust them in um encouraging these talks about g- global change and climate change. So like we, I feel like we're the cutoff basically. like,
What do
like
you call it in math? It's like the inflection point, right? Like
oh my god,
if we
yes.
I
don't
don't know.
if we don't have it, like it's I don't want to say it's fucked, but like what is it? What is it called? The point of no return, right? In games
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
or
yeah,
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 Amir. I think
and,
yeah,
and in maths it's also the inflection
it's
point.
also
So it's
yeah,
inflection
man.
point. Yeah,
on the money.
Previous
So
generation, dude, GG. Go for it.
so yeah, so if we stumble what is it like? I want to live life too. Like there's a part of me where I want to go just say fuck it and just live my life with how like the freedoms of what the previous generations like were accustomed to. But for some of us, like we don't have that choice. We just if we really want a future generation to begin with, like it's up to us.
that's actually a really good point. If you want a future generation, we should probably be starting thinking about it now. But you know what? We do have a choice. If you're, I mean, not we. If you're an American, you do have a choice. If you want to live like that, just go to Texas. And I'm not saying you get a cap, because literally the least lax. I mean, the mask mandate is gone, right, in Texas. So it's just kind
Oh
of
my
weird. It's honestly super weird how they regulate stuff because they don't regulate stuff. But that's another topic, to be honest, and I think that's good fodder for another episode. But back to climate change and global warming, we've digressed quite a bit because, as we've talked about, right, climate change encompasses a lot of stuff. It affects uh, a lot of factors in life, in a sense, right? Like we've only talked about the surface level, like this is bad because whatever consequences climate change happens, it's irreversible. Um, and we've also talked about the responsibility, but we've only been talking about like responsibility in terms of the we. What about the they, right? Because in a sense, governments are supposed to be one of the key initiators, the key maintainers, the key people to organize shifts that will help the environment. And you do see that gradually, right, with the Paris Climate Agreement, Paris Climate Change, damn, Paris Climate Agreement, and even though it's been set back because of a certain Trump administration had withdrawn it for the U.S. and U.S. is one of the big countries in the world with regards to emissions, so it's a big deal. Whose
At least
responsibility really is it at this point? Because right, like we can say it's our responsibility in a sense, but if the governments aren't doing a lot, then and I think a lot of governments right now are going the opposite direction in terms of like taking a populist mindset and saying, hey, I still want to pollute because that's better for our economy. It's really conflicting, to be honest.
yeah, well, I mean, first off, the governments are in charge of regulating like these measures for like let's
Texas.
let's say Texas, yeah, for the energy section of things. Like if it starts off with them just getting just money checks from lobbyists in Washington D.C. Well, they're they're just groomed to failure. So the government has a lot of responsibilities in that regard when it comes to just regulation and just s- being the controlling measure of like these industries. Like, we, if the government s- just accepts them into like the country per se, like let's say like a foreign like uh oil maker like like Shell like increase their oil production in America and stuff and their output. Well, it's up to the lob the what would you call it? Like the what do you call it?
There is a word. Yeah, I must have been.
The lawmakers?
It's
I don't know
escaping.
how to say it, but
It's not the lobbyists, right? We are talking about the
yeah,
lobbyists.
we were just talking about the lobbyists, but
Yeah.
like the ones making the laws, like
Oh, legislators.
let's say yes.
Legislators. Yes.
Yeah, they can't just ditch like halfway to the plan because they already have another like another deal like being set in on the side. So I feel like there's a huge issue that they and that's been plaguing like government the government by itself. What do you think of it?
Bruh, government, man, government. Oh, uh, every time I think, dude, I don't want to think about politics. It's hard not to do as we grow older. Um, Legislation is a problem, bro. Like, hey, man, look at Trump, man. I hate talking about this guy, but he's like the prime example, isn't it? This guy,
He's a part of the past now. But sorry.
yeah, he is a part of the past, but he created so many problems during the time he was there. No, I mean, yes, the Biden administration kind of, you know, turned all those decisions around, but it was the Paris Act, right? He was trying to withdraw from,
Hmm?
and
Paris
Yes.
then
Climate.
yeah,
She did.
he did, and then I mean that just if the former president of the United States thinks this that way, and he has that many supporters in just the U.S., think about how many people globally think the same way. That is the problem. And I mean,
So
yeah, that is the problem. And governments, here's the thing: governments are supposed to be for the people, trying to improve the world, trying to improve everyone's lives. But in reality, that's more so what doesn't happen. It's about getting the most votes, getting people on your side, and doing what you want once you're up in the seat. Again, yes, it's for quote unquote the betterment of the people, but people love to be in power. Anyway, uh, there are certain measures that most countries are taking. Like, I think the only countries that are doing or being enviro friendly are the Nordic countries, and I feel like
yes,
they're the the pinnacle or the goal that everyone should be aiming towards. But as days go by, it seems more less and less likely. Um, but it is problematic. Again, like Amir, I agree with Amir wholeheartedly. Where these governments, they go and say, hey, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna see it through. And then like 20% of the way in, they're like, you know what, man, yo, nah, nah, there's more important stuff. And again, there can be more important stuff, but
It can be more important.
it is tough, right? It is a hard balance. So
That's true.
stepping away from the government, I'll focus more so on talk about corporations and individuals. Like these companies that are causing a lot of the problem, they're only there for the profit, right? They don't care who they're affecting. I mean, if they
yes,
did
sir.
care, wages would be higher for people. There would be better money for everyone, but that's not how the world works. I think putting more regulation for corporations and these corporations actually starting to care is gonna be a big step towards big right step towards a better future. And all these companies that pollute um, and don't get rid of their waste properly and stuff. It's tough again, but the easiest way to counter it is again going back to governments. But hey, governments want people to vote for them and be like, hey, I love you, so they appeal to the companies, and then it's like a toxic cycle that it's really hard to break, but eventually we're going to have to. And it's just tough. It's just tough. It's hard to prioritize, but I just wish people said what they did more than just say it to get some eyes and get love and then move on. It's tough, man.
A good point you made there, though, about there being a lot of more important stuff to do, because there is a dichotomy with regards to developed countries can care more about environmental issues than developing countries, because as a developing country, you do have a lot of pressing concerns that you'd rather deal with first before climate change. And I think a good example of that is, although China right now is one of the world's largest polluters, they're also one of the initiators with regards to renewable energy sources, right? And with regards to solar, they're the ones with the greatest amount of solar production, and that's where you see the issue, because China itself is already stepping away from the developing tag. They can afford to think about renewables, especially considering that when you think about it in the future, the country with the most environmental leeway is probably going to be one of the countries with the greatest influence worldwide, right? Not just regards to environment, with regards to politics as well. And that's why you see China stepping up. And I think that's not a slight. I think that just shows the trajectory of a developing to developed country. You, as a developing country, right? Like, if you want to advance your economy and help the people first, as Abid pointed out, like, in order to appease the voters, what is the quickest way to, for example, to create jobs, for example, right? Like, if if your industry is heavily reliant on like coal, oil, and natural gas, then surely you'd want to utilize that first before thinking about environmental standards and such. As it's a heart-wrenching reality, but you see that pattern everywhere around the world, right? It's tough.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
I mean, if it was easy, it would have been solved by now, right? Or
Yeah, for sure.
we'd be on a good
I
path.
like to think about that too, right? But with the ways governments have been recently, I don't know. You literally have the vaccine ready, and then the distribution is also failing. But you know what? Yeah, that's another topic for another time as well.
Yes.
But the unpopularity of, sorry, Amir?
I mean, I was gonna just say, do you think skilled workers come into play in this when it comes to renewable energy? Like is there a skill cap when it comes to
I was thinking the same, because I was actually just going to transition to renewable energy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But regards to what skilled workers, Amir? Like, what aspect of it?
Hmm, I really can't put my head into it because I've never actually talked about it. The first thing
Because I
that
mean, solar and wind are very straightforward, right? But then again, I think the initial upfront costs are what inhibits a lot of countries from,
This is factual.
from investing.
It takes a lot
Yeah.
of money to set that stuff up, dude. It's a lot of
Yeah.
money.
And but solar, in terms of like the amount of energy that you get, once you have the system, it's actually a lot cheaper than any of the non-renewable resources that we've been
Facts.
talking about, right?
That's facts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think
But-
solar wind are the cheapest, right? And then geothermal
Right,
and
it is.
nuclear
It's-
is
it's-
more expensive.
I mean, geothermal, we can't really talk a lot because
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
yeah.
think I'm there. I can't imagine Philippines having a geothermal ready.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, solar and wind. I mean, yeah. We have the sun all the time. Wind
Yes,
too.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Especially in Malaysia.
Oh my goodness.
But
Yes.
with regards to that, dude, there is one particular renewable source that gains a lot of conversation,
Oh.
and that's nuclear.
Ah.
Yeah, where do you guys fall in that debate? Would you? Because
Risky.
it is one of the cleanest form of energies. Like, I think
True.
one of the issues is, as we're back to government, huh? We can never get away from government talk. But yeah, it's mostly because of the lax regulation from governments to cut corners with regards to nuclear energy, that such issues persist, right? And there are like one-off cases where like there's nothing avoidable, like there's nothing you could have done to stop a disaster for a nuclear reactor. But for a country that's looking for like the cheapest, most efficient solution and has problems with solar and wind, nuclear would be the get-go, right? It's just been so depopularized by today's society that, as a risk because of Chernobyl
Yeah.
and Fukushima,
I mean,
that
yeah.
it's become a stigma.
Yo. and I think that's a great reason for that. It's just the trauma from those meltdowns
The trauma, right?
from what happened.
The effects
It's
are lifelong. No, like Chernobyl is still screwed.
Mhm.
Like
That's
yeah.
true. That's true.
you can't inhabit that space anymore. So I mean, I'd rather let people live there or whatever than completely take that away. But I agree with you. I mean, if government don't cut corners, everything's done the way it definitely should be, especially when it comes to a life or death thing like this.
Mhm.
Why not? It'll work out, right? But again, the skepticism lies just because of the tragedies of those
The tragedies,
scenarios.
right?
And I mean, when was the last time someone died because they were standing next to a solar panel or whatever? You know, like, or they get caught in a wind
I'm wishing
turbine.
not
I
to.
mean, like,
Yeah,
it's extremely rare. Like, if
it's
someone
really
does,
rare.
you're pretty. I don't know, dude. Anyway, but
Natural selection.
yeah, naturally, I get in a way, but at the same time, it's like
Yeah.
it's more safe,
Hope
right?
it has that.
But yeah,
Right.
I mean, as Amir was saying, skepticism.
yeah. I mean, the technology isn't the problem. It's more on the enforcement of it.
That's
Like
true.
when we talk about Fukushima, it's like the planning of it. It didn't really work out. It's a place that has been ravaged with earthquakes, which has been known to cause tsunamis in the future. So, like 10 years ago, when that that meltdown happened, that caused 3 reactors to to self destruct. I I think it just reinforced the stigma all over again, and there's like a a lesson back to zero in some ways
Hmm.
to reinforce nuclear energy in everyone's lives. But I mean, like when you talk about risks, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to like those developing countries, like I'll think like about Eastern Europe or the Middle East when it comes to enforcing nuclear energy in like the present future or something like that. Um, well, the risks. I mean, I'm not gonna fucking. I'm not gonna put words into anyone's mouth, but like talks about invasions or stuff like like those high risk those high risk like unaccountable like scenarios where I mean just there's just so much to consider and with a lot of legislators, like we should still talk about governments here, there's just so much to account for, and I don't in a developed country like Japan, where you think that it would be safe and secure, and didn't go off as well as it should have, and people are just detracting away from nuclear energy. I I I struggle to think in a place of a developing country where you know there are more scenarios to think of, and just well there's just more risks to include nuclear energy into the scenarios in
Mhm.
place of the other renewable energies.
That is fair. That is fair. I'm glad this conversation with regards to nuclear energy is not becoming as relevant as it was, right? Because of the efficiency of solar and wind nowadays. Because now, like, especially it's becoming privatized too with Tesla's own solar technology and its battery saving capabilities.
Bro, that ish
But
looks.
battery storage, my bad, battery storage capabilities. But yeah, I mean, it's still a relevant topic because nuclear is still an ongoing debate in a lot of developed countries, and it's always nice to harken back to that. But with that, before wrapping up this episode, which is a really deep, not deep, which is a really dense topic, by the way, climate change, because of the amount of stuff it encompasses. But one thing that is used interchangeably is climate change and global warming, right? And to clarify with the listeners, climate change includes global warming. And I think people don't realize that often. But climate change also includes other stuff that is not only the heating of the planet. So the rising sea levels, the glaciers melting, the accelerating um, ice deterioration, and also like shifts in plant blooming, for example, or crop harvest times changing. We don't realize these subtle changes, right? Because we think of climate change like, oh, I don't mind living in a hotter country, especially, for example, if you're in Russia and you have the Arctic Ocean opening up. as it melts, that's a good economic trade. But you realize that your harvests are going to be equally damaged because of that, right? And there begs the question: how has climate change personally affected you? Because for me, like you could clearly see back in the Philippines, my mom used to tell me about this. Baguio is my last name, but Baguio is also a resort town in Philippines. And when she went there as a teenager, it was like she brought like not winter clothing, but it was like long sleeve clothing, you know, like it was single digit temperatures. But now it's nearly aircon temperatures. It's kind of sad to see, but I'm pretty sure there's more serious effects, right? What about you guys?
Amir, you want to go first?
Oh, you can go ahead, man.
Okay. I mean, it's tough because I don't think I could really think of a point where it directly influenced me that way, but I mean, subtly, obviously, it's. Dude, okay, wait. Actually, the weather in Toronto, dude. I just thought about it. Ah, man. Apparently, when I moved, dude, like, I was expecting it to be cold, but when I moved here, apparently it's been the coldest it's been in over 30, 40 years.
Huh.
Since I moved here, like, over the years, and I'm just like, bro, there's no fucking way, dude. First, I know I'm a cold-hearted bitch, but I don't bring that much cold, you know what I mean? But to extents, it is part of climate change, and that's what it leads to. So I would say in Toronto itself, the extremities of the weather that I've experienced, dude, when it's hot, it's like Malaysian weather. It's not supposed to be tropical weather up here, dude. It's not supposed to be 35 degrees Celsius when I walk out in the summer, dude. I was not expecting that. And in the winters, it's like minus 20. I'm like, hello. So, yes, I mean, that is a stereotype and it's more expected, but both ways the temperature has been higher than the average over the past few decades. So I guess that would probably be mine.
Right.
For me, you know what? The funniest thing is I feel those effects more as a kid than I do now. I don't know if it's just like luck being put into play because I'm in a place where no earthquakes happen, no tsunamis. Like Malaysia is very secure in that way. And in Seattle, Washington is like more. The biggest problem there is just volcanoes erupting, and that is just a rare occurrence. So in terms of climate change, I guess I could talk about the snow. I guess like it's very unusual to find snow at the west coast. uh, I guess just those rare occurrences in climate that's just mind-boggling to just occur sometimes. Yeah.
Right. I mean
Uh,
that is it.
yeah.
Sorry, Amir?
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, as a kid, it's like, oh, everything's hot. I'm feeling global warming. I'm feeling climate change. Like, I feel as though like my mind was so much open back then. Like, I could put
Okay.
blame on anything wrong on like these words these terms that I just learned in science class.
I mean, yeah, that's true. But this question is interesting to me only because I feel like it's only gonna like I'm only talking about experiences as of now, but I feel like later on, sadly, there'll probably be more, you know, pressing changes that I will genuinely feel because of climate change. It's always good to ponder about that, right? But with that, I think the general gist of this conversations that we've been having is that although the grass, we'd like to think of, okay, maybe if we want to live our lives, right? And we take that opinion, the grass is greener on the other side, but in reality, the grass has to be green in the first place on both sides. So there goes the argument.
My goodness.
Right.
Oh my
Anyway, thank you to listeners for we're coming to our TED Talk on climate change, right? Because TED Talks usually happen about climate change. But let's go straight to our question of the week. And to be a bit more lighthearted, it's not going to be a serious topic, but harkens back to us being university students. And question of the week is: if you were to become a professor in a specific field, what field would it be? And I have an interesting answer for me. I think it's going to be a social policy, public policy professor.
Wow.
Yeah, because
Where
I
at?
like to. Okay, that was not the question. I think where is a hard one, homie.
KW, dude. University of Malaya, dude.
Hey, yo, that is not the worst, bro. At least you didn't say.
Yeah, you're right. My bad, dude. Taylor's Uni.
Yeah, I can't
We're Taylor's, man. We're Taylor's alumni. Anyway, who'd like to go first?
Uh,
is that it? Just public policy? Like, any other explanation for that?
Social policy, administration, public policy. I think they're the same field, homie.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd
Probably
be in charge of the esports program at a uni, bro. Easy.
Oh
Easy
my
money.
goodness.
It's not even hard, dude. Not even hard. But then
So
again, that's
what-
not technically a professor, so
Yeah.
probably media, dude. Media's fun.
Media.
Oh.
It works.
Yeah.
Any specialization?
Ooh, social media probably, because I can talk a lot about it. All about the tactics and the mammograms and all that. Yeah.
Sheesh.
What you on it?
Affiliate. Huh. This is very interesting. You know, I guess political science would be the biggest cop out, because it's my major.
Pol sci.
I say international relations. Yeah, international relations, because I always
National relations.
dreamed of being editor in public policy and all those things, like in magazines or anything. Yeah, so a lot of my professors are actually editors as well, or associate editors. So I can see that happening, like being a part-time not part-time professor, but like a resident professor. Yeah, while doing my own thing on the side.
All very interesting questions. I mean, I like how we're all in a very similar field, right? But and I've always thought of English professors. That would also be a nice one, like because you're just doing.
Robert?
No, this is in general.
Oh,
English professor, because we're all nearly in that
English prof for me.
Yeah.
Probably, dude.
English
Talk
prof.
about Shakespeare.
Ow.
Shakespeare.
I don't think I have the patience.
Anyway.
Artawa, bitch.
You're right. Song of the week, boys. Well, it's only the three of us. I mean, still one, but I guess we have more time to explain. Mine, I'm not expecting an explanation though. Mine is Daisy by Pentagon.
Wow! You stole my
Yes.
song!
Oh, really? Okay,
No
I can
way,
always
bro.
choose
No,
another.
I mean,
Okay.
I have like 3 songs. So
Oh yeah, you came up with it. But Daisy by Pentagon, very. I'm living the lyrics. Yeah.
Wait.
Who want to go next?
My God.
I think that's an
Okay.
adequate explanation for myself. But yeah.
So my song of the week is GI Blues by Elvis Presley.
Ooh.
Ooh.
What made me think of this song is well, we're thinking about nuclear energy and stuff, so
Damn.
I just likened it to a nuclear wasteland. So in the world of Fallout, there is this radio station that plays very classical blues music. So one of them is this song by Elvis, and
GI
just
Blues.
it just fit well. How about you, Abid?
Bro, for me, it's Reppin' the Boys from Vancouver / Manila, dude. Manila Gray back at it, dude. Yo, they're back with the new track, Backhouse Ballin', with some guy named James Reed, who's apparently really famous in Philippines.
Oh, yo, really?
There you go.
Damn.
Jude
Okay.
knows him,
Wait,
but they have a song with
Dude
this
is
guy.
lit.
Backhouse Ballin', new track, banger.
I will
Go check
listen
them
to
out. Anyway, that's
Anyway, with that, it's a wrap, everyone. Thank you for listening once again to the 8th ATSCast of the season. Me, Abid, and Amir. Wow, it's only a few of us, so I can say our names.
Have
Bye,
a heartbeat.
everyone.
See ya.
Abid, hit them with the outro, not Jason this time, because he's not editing, bitch.
Yeah, this is my hero.